As Amaka slept, she saw herself on a throne, with two mermaids, one on each side, dressed like a queen with a crown on her head. It took her a while to realize she was underwater. She panicked, thinking she was going to drown, when she heard a voice filled with authority and power.
You have taken Princess Adana's waist beads, so you will take her place as Queen of the Water Kingdom.
Amaka was an only child, but not just an only child. She was a spoilt child. Her mother, Azuka, lavished her with gifts and spared the rod despite her husband's disapproval. On one occasion, a woman who worked as a cook brought her daughter to their house. She was around the same age as Amaka and was playing with a new wooden toy her father made for her in the courtyard. When Amaka saw the little girl playing with the toy, she tried to collect it, but the girl did not give it to her. "You already have all the latest toys," she said. "Why do you still want mine?" Amaka started crying, and Azuka, who couldn't bear to see her daughter in tears, collected the toy and gave it to her. Oku, her husband, saw her collecting the toy and wasn't happy. "You'll spoil her," he said. "Stop encouraging her behavior." But Adaku didn't listen. Amaka had no friends because she always collected things from them and never returned it. The villagers were always talking about her greed, but no one dared say it. To her face, they always had smiles on their faces whenever she was around, but in their minds, they blamed Azuka for not teaching her good etiquette. Amaka grew up never having to lift a finger. They had maids that catered to their needs. In Okora, a small village surrounded by water, her father, Oku, was by far the wealthiest man not only in his own village, but also in the surrounding clans. He had numerous boats and men who went out to catch seafood and supply to the neighboring villages in his stead. He was even richer than the royal family, and so was well respected. This was until 2 years ago. He passed away from a brief, mysterious illness when Amaka was 16 years old. His dying wish was for his daughter to learn good manners and get married to his friend's son Demi, whom she was already betrothed to when the time was right. After his death, Azuka, having no idea how to keep his business afloat, squandered everything to fuel the extravagant lifestyle she and her daughter loved until they plunged into debt and had to leave their home and everything her late husband had worked for to live in an old hut with 2 rooms at the outskirts of the village. Azuka started selling roasted corn in the village market to take care of herself and her daughter. That was when she realized her mistake, but it was too late. Everything she taught Amaka was already ingrained in her. She could not control her bad habits. She was already 18 years old at the time, and whenever she accompanied her mother to the market, she went about stealing jewelry and wrappers from the villagers, even though it wasn't her intention to steal. In the past, whenever she liked something and picked it up, her mother always sent someone to pay, and now, even after they lost all their possessions, she still continued with this habit. Late one evening, when Azuka was still at the market, Amaka wandered off to the shore of the river. Her mother never allowed her to go near the river because she was afraid she would drown or worse, be captured by the marine spirits. There were many rumors of young girls disappearing when they went to the river to fetch water. Her maids and guards were always watching her, but now she walked alone since her mother could no longer afford them. She knew about the rumors, but thought they were made up. When she got to the river, she was amazed at its beauty, the way the water surface glistened in the setting evening sun. She had only seen the water from afar and didn't have any idea it could be so captivating. Entranced by the waves of the river and the cool breeze, she stepped closer and closer until the water was rocking gently against her feet. Out of the corner of her eyes, she saw a glimmer caused by the sunlight and moved closer to see what it was. And to her surprise, a beautiful red waist bead was laying in the shallow part of the water. She bent down and picked it up, examining it. She did not know that eyes were watching from below the water. As usual, Amaka did not bother to check if it belonged to anyone. She was fascinated by the new beads she found, and with the excitement of a child who just got a new plaything, hurried back home before her mother discovered she had sneaked out. She put the waist beads under her pillow just as her mother came to call her for dinner. After she finished eating, she laid down on the bed with the beads still under her pillow. As she slept, she dreamt that she was standing by the riverbank, staring at the water. She didn't think too much about the dream. The next day, there was a calabash of water in front of her door. She picked it up and drank the water, thinking it was her mother who kept it. The second night as she slept, she saw herself walking further into the water, her legs struggling against the resistance of the water currents. The next morning, there was a plate of food in front of her door. Again, she ate it without suspecting a thing. On the third night as she slept, she saw herself almost completely covered by the water. When she woke up the next day, the beads she put under her pillow had miraculously found its way to her waist. How did these beads get on my waist, she thought. I don't remember putting them on yesterday night. Then she remembered the stories she heard about the marine spirits. She took the waist beads off immediately, and for the first time in her life, Amaka was terrified. She paled at once as she realized she must have taken something meant for the spirits of the water. She decided to return it. Later that evening, she went to the riverbank and threw the beads into the water. She went back home without looking back. Unknown to her, as she was leaving, one of the marine spirits followed her back home. The spirit waited for her to fall asleep, then took her soul to the marine kingdom. As Amaka slept, she saw herself on a throne with two mermaids, one on each side, dressed like a queen with a crown on her head. It took her a while to realize she was underwater. She panicked, thinking she was going to drown, when she heard a voice filled with authority and power.
You have taken Princess Adana's waist beads, so you will take her place as Queen of the Water Kingdom.
When she turned to see who was speaking, she saw a very scary creature looking directly at her. She then noticed that the voice she heard was in her mind. "No," said Amaka, "I refuse to be your queen and carry out evil deeds." The creature laughed and said, "You have no choice. Your spirit has already been tied to the throne." When she looked at her hands and feet, they were chains that bonded her to the throne. Amaka woke up screaming, and her mother Azuka ran into her room immediately and asked her what was wrong. She tried to tell her what happened, but she could not. The mermaids had put a spell on her that prevented her from saying anything, so she lied that she saw an insect. Her mother believed her and told her to calm down because it was just a dream. Little did she know that it wasn't a dream, it was very real, and her daughter's spirit had journeyed to the Water Kingdom as she slept. The next morning, Amaka ran as fast as her legs could carry her to the river and threw the waist beads back into the water. "Take back your beads. I do not want them anymore," she said. But it appeared on her waist again. Immediately it hit the water surface. The beads were now linked with her soul, and she could no longer get rid of it. She went back home feeling sad and frustrated and started trying to find a way to free herself from the clutches of the evil marine spirits. She searched for a solution during the day, and at night, her soul went on errands for the mermaids. They sent her to places filled with horrors no human being should ever have to see. With each passing day, she grew more dejected and weary. Her hope dimmed. She became a shadow of herself. The sparkling trinkets and beads, the colorful wrappers and shoes became dull in her eyes. Her world had lost its colors. Her mother noticed the change in her and tried everything to lift her spirits, but she remained the same. Now she could see things beyond the human eyes, terrifying things. Even the villagers noticed something was wrong. She was no longer the rude girl with mischief and curiosity in her eyes. Now her eyes were sad, dead. She wandered aimlessly through the village during the day and returned to her room at night to run errands for the mermaids in the spirit world. One day while she was wandering mindlessly around, she found herself by an old empty well at the side of a small hill. An old woman was sitting on the ground beside it. Her eyes were closed, but she seemed to be looking in the same direction Amaka was standing.
Who are you?
I am Amaka, daughter of late Chief Oku, and only daughter of my mother. She replied.
No, who are you?
For the first time in a long while, Amaka felt a tinge of curiosity. Who is this strange woman sitting beside the well? Is she a ghost? But I have never seen her before. Maybe she is new here, Amaka thought. The woman hit the stick she was holding by the side of the well, making Amaka come back to reality. I have told you who I am, old wise one, she replied.
No, I see a crown on your head, chains on your hands and feet, and death follows you.
Amaka's eyes widened in shock, so the old woman could see her soul and the malicious spirits that lingered around her.
Come closer, my child. The spirits and mermaids have no hold over you in this place. Only those with flesh and bones can enter here.
She moved closer. Once she stepped into the clearing around the well, she felt the weight lift from her shoulders. She felt free. She walked to the old woman's side and sat down. Now, my child, said the woman, tell me everything. She told her about how they lost their wealth, her mother's advice, and how she picked the beads from the water. As she narrated the story, she wondered if everything that had happened and was about to happen would have been avoided if she had just listened to her mother. The old woman sighed and shook her head.
You are suffering as a result of your greed and stubbornness. The water spirits cannot leave the water until they have a medium. The waste beads you took is the medium that links them to you. By taking the beads, you gave them control over you.
How can I free myself, wise one? Amaka asked.
There's only one way out. You must find the missing princess and bring her back to take her rightful place on the throne. Only then will you be free.
But, wise one, said Amaka, I do not know who this princess is, neither do I have a clue how to find her.
You have the compass with you. The beads you took were made with the scales from the princess tailed. Follow your heart and the beads will lead you to her. I am not allowed to interfere in your journey. The only information I can give you is that Adana is trapped in the land of men, not in the spirit world.
Thank you very much, wise one. I'll be on my way now. When she crossed the boundary, the heavy weight returned, but this time around, there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. As she went, the old woman looked at her with sadness in her eyes. Poor child, she said, and shook her head.